What spray tips do I use and how do I store them? So what I'll do is actually store my tips inside pump armour, and I'll just put this in neat into these little containers here. These are actually fridge containers. They are from B&M, yeah, nothing special. They've got a little basket inside and it just drains away there like that. So then you can just take your tips out and then just go through them without putting your hands directly into the cleaner. Great for your pumps, pump conditioner, but I also find it really great for the tips as well. It just stops them from drying out. So basically, you don't have to blast the tips through with water every day. You just give them a semi-clean up with a toothbrush, stick them into your pump armour, and away you go. So what I'll actually do is take out the tips I need. So I'll just stick that to one side for a minute. Okay, so what I have here is a few different tips, really: high pressure, low pressure, and so on. But really, in my job, there was only 3 tips that I mainly use, and that was a 619 for the ceiling, a 515 for the walls, and a 310 for the woodwork. That was my main 3 tips. I had a couple of like 210s in there. You know, I had some 517s, some 617s. I had those tips. I had a multiple between low pressure and high pressure tips in the same sort of numbers. But really, those 3 tips were my main tips. I think the 310 is great for woodwork, as I said. It's a great all-rounder. It gives you a nice 6-inch fan and a 10 orifice. So really a good all-rounder. I don't think I've ever come away from that really when I'm doing sort of doors, skirting boards and stuff like that. Obviously, if you're doing mass amounts of woodwork and you're doing big doors, then you might drop that up to a 410. But, you know, it's good to have those in your tip box. But like I said, the 3 main tips I'm going to use all the time were the 310, the 515 and the 619. So the 515 would be, generally I use high pressure, but it's personal preference. And it also depends on the job. Like if it's a big room, high pressure, smaller room, maybe a low pressure. But with that tip, 515, yeah, that's going to give you a 10-inch fan with a 15 orifice, which I'll explain the numbers in a minute and how they work. But this would be my wall tip. This is the sort of tip I'd use on the wall. If you're using this in the low pressure, I think that would go up to about 516. So it would be like just the opposite number there on the second number. Perfect tip for me for doing walls. Really controlled. It's also great for fences, stuff like that. So coming to my third tip here, again high pressure, but you can use this in the low pressure as well. And I think that obviously that second number would slightly change as well on that on the low pressure tip there. This is a 619. So this tip would mainly be used. I'd be using this for ceilings. Again, it depends on the size of the ceiling. I might drop that down to a 517 or a 617. Depending on the size of the ceilings, but generally 619 for all my ceilings. I really want to get that overlap and I really want to get that coverage of paint on there. So 619 would be my choice for the ceilings there. Okay, so now what we'll talk to you about is tip sizes and what the sizes actually mean on the tip. So this is a 619. So what you would do is you put your finger over the 19 and you'll see the 6. You times that by 2 and that will give you 12 inches. So that gives you a 12-inch fan at the perfect distance away from the wall. So obviously, if you are, the recommended say distance is 12 inches away from the wall, that will give you a 12-inch fan across that surface. Obviously, if you're too close, that fan is going to be smaller. If you're too far away, then that fan is always going to be absolutely massive. So at 12 inches, you will get that 12-inch fan. So another way of looking at that tip as well and how it represents it is it would be 60 degrees, right? So that would be a 60-degree fan, which will basically work out at your 12 inches. Every number on those tips will be the same. Like every tip you use will represent the same. So moving on then to the 515, exactly, put your number over the 15 there, and then that will give you the 10-inch fan, because that is a 10. So 5 times by 2 is 10. That is going to give you, at the 12 inches, your perfect spread, 10 inches onto the surface. And moving on to the 310, again, 310, 6-inch fan, 10 orifice. So the second number of the tip. What's the second number mean? So go back to the 619. The second number, which is 19, is the actual orifice. So it's the whole size that the paint is coming through. Moving on to the 15, a 15 orifice, so a lot smaller, and then onto the 10, a lot smaller. So in theory, for woodwork, I would be mainly using 10s, and then wall tips, you could obviously, and ceiling tips, you'd adjust it, but 15 generally for my walls, and then a 19 generally for my ceilings. But these are something you have to play about with. Certain paints might require a bigger tip, but like I said, those 3 tips have mainly what I've used my whole career. I've got a few odds and sods in there, but I would say that most of the tips I bought back in the day don't get used at all, if ever. Sometimes I've gone up to a 312 for woodwork if the material is really thick, some primers, but very rare. Like I said, if I found products that work with those tips, I've worked them over the years. But yeah, that's my 3 main tips, and the best advice: get started and make it less confusing. Go with your 310 for the woodwork, your 515 for the walls, and your 619 for the ceiling. If you haven't already, guys, please like our videos and subscribe. It helps us build this community. Please share this video with anybody else for more helpful tips. Cheers, guys.